That's one of the things that I feel so strongly about. An insight isn't a fact, right? It's a hidden truth.
Are you a fitness-loving foodie? Then Defy Snacks is for you. Defy offers real, high-quality chocolate you love, combined with functional ingredients, giving you as much as 26 grams of protein per bag, so you can be both a little bit bad and a little bit good at the same time. As a female-owned brand, Defy dedicates a portion of its profits to other women-owned businesses. Currently sold in the US, you can find us on defywithanI.snacks.com and follow us on social at Defy Snacks.
Hello and welcome to the Shiny New Object podcast. My name is Tom Ollerton. I'm the founder of Automated Creative, the creative effectiveness ad tech platform. And this is a weekly podcast about the future of data-driven marketing. Every week or so, I get the pleasure and the privilege of interviewing one of our industry's leaders about the future of data-driven marketing. And this week is no different. I'm on a call. I'm in a hotel room in Amsterdam, the glamour. I'm on a call with Fara Howard, who was until recently the CMO of GoDaddy. Now, I saw Fara speak on the brand innovator stage in a raging hot tent in Cannes on the beach. And it was one of the weirdest case studies that I'd ever seen. And it was presented with such humor. And I thought, right, I've got to get her on the podcast. So I sort of hassled Fara until she agreed to come on the podcast. And here she is. So Fara, for anyone who doesn't know who you are and what you do, could you give the audience a bit of background?
Absolutely. And it's really nice to be here. And no hassling was required. Really excited about the conversation.
Mild hassling.
Scheduling's always tricky when you're busy people like I think we both are. So me, quick background on me. I'm a lifelong marketer. And, as you said, most recently was the CMO of GoDaddy. But let's go in the way back time machine. I started at Gatorade because I believe that you need to have deep empathy and understanding of the product. And I knew that product inside and out right out of grad school. Spent a few years there. And then I had the great opportunity to work across multiple brands in my career, including Dell, where I spent 11 years, a really long chapter. Vans, where I helped them celebrate their 50th anniversary globally. Amazon Fashion, where I helped them launch Prime Wardrobe and many, many private label brands. And then most recently, GoDaddy.
Wow, man. Right, that's heavyweight. I'm feeling slightly intimidated a bit. Well, no, a little bit. But anyway, well, what a great career. Fantastic. And here we are. We have you as and we were going to say recently departed, weren't we? But that's... So what a lovely objective. I'm saying it's great to have this objective opinion about your career to this point. So in that very exciting and slightly intimidating career, what new belief or behavior has had the biggest impact on your work life?
One of the things that became important to me, and honestly, it became important to me not at the dawn of my career, but at the dawn of becoming a mom at the same time as having a very demanding career. I have three teenage boys. They're 14, 15, and 16. You heard that right. And the really important learning for me is a premise that I call toggling, which I recognize is a technical term, but it's really one that I use around how I choose to spend my time. And like I said, that became critically important when my life became beyond crazy. Crazy house, crazy job, and trying to do two things at once was just completely infeasible. You often hear people say, I'm a great multitasker, and I call BS on that. I think most people aren't great multitaskers. You end up giving it a portion of your attention, and thus you get a portion of the outcome. And so one of the things that became really important to me is toggling, which means when I'm at work, I am all in. You're getting all of me. I'm not doing other things. I'm just talking to you. I'm just listening to you. I'm just writing this paper. I'm just doing this analysis. And my phone is not in the room. I'm not texting. I'm not thinking about other things. No other tabs are up. Same holds when I'm at home. When I'm at home, there's no phones at the table. Our phones have homes. We are actually talking to each other. We're looking each other in the eyes. We're wholly present. Now, mind you, we mess up every once in a while, and technology and life gets in the way, and situations dictate that you've got to multitask. But for me, my ability to be present in the moment requires me to toggle so that I'm all on or all off. And that means there are times at work where I'll say, hey, I'm not available from 6 to 8 p.m. because I'm at a kid's football game, and I'll get right back to you at 8. Or I say to my kids, like, Mom's going to be out of town for a few days, and I'll talk to you when I get back. And both get it. And it's been a really important premise in my life, and it's really helped me set boundaries and really focus.
Oh, Fara, that's brilliant. That's fantastic. Because like my version of that, when you said toggling, I thought, oh, I'm just going to say this. So I think you've got this like a bar, right? And one side's family, and the other side is work. And if you have it too close to one side, then the other side gets annoyed. But you have it in the middle, that both of them hate you. It's just like you're doing this, but you're like, right, get on that side, and you're going to get this side later. So, but you have you're very clear your boundaries. Like my daughter learns about boundaries in school, and you're living your boundaries. So I love that. Love that, and I'd slightly push you on. And getting back to people at 8 o'clock at night, it's quite late, but at least you have a moment to do it. You're compartmentalizing those bits of your evening that are eating into your personal time, but it's not always on. You're not getting distracted by those pings and stuff. So fantastic. So I love toggling. I'm going to give that a proper go. You've inspired me. Thank you. So all right, let's talk about data-driven marketing now specifically. What bit of advice have you found yourself sharing most often when it comes to helping people become a better data-driven marketer?
There are two things that I share with my team and remind myself often, and particularly right now with everything that's changing in the landscape technically, is remember that no one's an expert right now, right? Like you have to learn by doing. And I think there's, historically in marketing, again, go back in the Wayback Time Machine. Once you push something out into the world, it was done, right? It was a one-way door. That billboard's up. That ad is, has been, pushed to prime time, and you can't get it back. That's not the world we largely live in now. And so remember that learning by doing is critically important. And then the second piece is like, get ready to make some mistakes and don't be afraid of failing. And I know that sounds really trite, but I think it's so important that you set expectations that when you do something for the first time, you're that's pretty non-declarative. You are not going to be awesome at it the first time you do it. And that's okay. Maybe by the third time you do it, you're pretty good. By the 18th time you do it, you're pretty good. By the 100th time you do it, you're an expert. And so everyone just needs to give themselves a little bit of grace as they lean in and experiment, because we all are in real time.
What's your phrase? Like, no one's an expert right now. It's so complicated now that no one person can see the whole picture.
Agree.
Like, no. I mean, maybe you disagree as an experienced and successful CMO. Like, yeah, you've got a good understanding of conversion optimization on your website. You've got a good understanding of what goes in the Super Bowl ads. Those two things, like, unbelievable. And you can probably talk turkey when it comes to email optimization or Pinterest or something. Do you know what I mean? I assume you're relatively dangerous in all of those topics, but you're not a generalist. You got someone. So no one CMO can understand the full range of everything. It's impossible to be an expert. So when you're saying learn by doing, make mistakes, do it 18 times before you start judging yourself, how do you deal with knowing that people within your organizations are going to be making mistakes when the board is asking you not to?
Yeah, well, I feel so lucky that for the majority of my career, I've worked in companies that understand that iteration is the path to great outcomes. And the 7 years that I was at GoDaddy, the culture really was, and our CEO would speak often about, it's an experimentation culture. And when you experiment, about half the time, you're going to fail. But then you're one step closer to getting it right. And as long as that failure isn't something that you can recover from, again, my random reference, like an out-of-home billboard, right? Or, a Super Bowl spot that can't be pulled back because it's live. All of those learnings and failures don't need to be incredibly expensive or incredibly time-consuming. And so I think as long as you have a culture where failing doesn't mean, and we're not setting out to fail, clearly, but we're setting out to win. But we know that by taking risks and doing things that we haven't done before, we're going to make some mistakes along the way. And you've really got to create a culture where you can do that. And for what it's worth, like we as leaders, we have to own our failures too, right? And we actually have to be willing to fail publicly. We have to articulate our mistakes and communicate our fallibility. And when we do that, then the organization's like, oh, I get it. Like this is something that we're okay with. When we tried to crack the code of, and I'll put that in quotes for those of you who are listening, not watching, I'm air quoting. When we worked to crack the code of YouTube at GoDaddy, and it's in quotes because you never fully crack the code, but when we made meaningful progress there, we had tons of missteps before we had a positive outcome. But those missteps were on an upward trajectory. And so you end up feeling good about the mistakes. And that sounds really odd, but you can see the progress. But again, it has to be you as a leader have to play a role in creating that culture, and you have to role model it too.
I had an odd experience. I was on the train on the way down from Newcastle at the end of half term to London, and I was looking, and you know that when you're looking over someone's shoulder, you're not really looking at what they're looking at. And so this guy's reading he's a student, right? And he's reading all this like science papery stuff. I just completely over my head, and I couldn't read it anyway, but sort of see what it was. And then he had a graph, which was, and it clearly said, test results over time. And it was like, there was this path, and my daughter's 7, right? She ain't got a graph yet. I guess it's coming. But and I thought, and this guy was going like this, up and down like this, but the general path was him going up like that. I mean, that's a loose and tangential articulation of what you're saying, but like, he could see it wasn't like all those that every time you go down, you're out, you're off the course. It's no, you're plotting your learning over time. And those tests they're all campaigns, I guess, in their own right, each one of those tests. So that's really lovely to hear. And I think that works when it's coming from the CEO. I mean, I remember I was in an innovation position once, and my role was to be an innovator within an organization. And I went to my boss and went, well, yeah, like most of this stuff's not going to work. That's kind of the point, right? Like maybe one out of these 10 things is going to work. And he looked at me and he went, no, Tom, that's not what's going to happen. You need to land more than one. And I was like, oh, okay, But and then fair enough, he was very supportive and he's a very good friend of mine. But if you got the CEO saying that all of this is an experiment, all of this is a mistake mistake forgiving culture, then there you go. You learn gradually over time.
And the odds are 50-50, right? And to your point, the odds are up and to the right if you just keep iterating. Hey, one other point to you, maybe a subject change, but one other piece of feedback that I give to, folks who are starting their career or early in their career journey around data-driven marketing was like, remember your voice matters and that we want to learn from you. I mean, when I watch my kids on TikTok, are they more adept than I am on that platform? Absolutely. And so that's just one of many examples. Like I want to learn from people who had different experiences than me. So don't be quiet when you're in the room. If people ask for your perspective, they're asking because they genuinely can learn from you. And you belong in that room, use your voice and teach people, the things that you know, because they simply may not.
Yeah, Joe Harper was on this podcast, and his advice, he's a senior content guy at Diageo, and he was saying exactly that. It's like on day one, as an intern at Diageo, stuff that everyone through the organization doesn't know. Just say it. Just like you have your experience of those platforms. I totally agree with that. This episode of the Shiny New Object podcast is brought to you in partnership with MadFest. Whether it's live in London or streamed online to the global marketing community, you can always expect a distinctive and daring blend of fast-paced content, startup innovation pitches, and unconventional entertainment from MadFest events. You'll find me causing trouble on stage, recording live versions of this podcast, and sharing a beer with the nicest and most influential people in marketing. Check it out at www.madfestlondon.com. So now we're going to talk about your shiny new object, which is the importance of retaining humanity in your storytelling. Very bold, very big. Why is that your shiny new object, and what do you mean?
I think that our job as marketing leaders is you'll often hear me say, or those who've been on my team, that I believe that you're a psychologist, an anthropologist. Um, you're a empathetic listener and watcher of humans. And what you're really trying to understand is what job your brand is doing for those people. And ultimately what we're doing is we're studying humanity, right? And we're trying to figure out our role as brands in their life. And that inherently is a quiet listening activity that then is amplified by technology. But I think there's so much conversation right now around the importance of technology and speed and progress, and all those things are true. But if we're not actually thinking about who we're serving, which are humans, and bringing to them answers to their problems through really intense study and focus, then all the technology and speed and communication is for naught, because you haven't actually spoken to them. And it's something I spend a ton of time thinking about and a ton of time talking to my teams about, my business teams, my business partners, as well as my creative teams, that the most important part in our work as marketers is the upfront listening, planning, and articulation of, and, dropping big marketing terms here, again, air quotes, the insight, right? Like, what is the actual insight that then your product is addressing for that customer? And that really is the human truth from which all the beautiful creative and all the compelling communication can be built. And again, then amplified by technology. But what really matters to me is that that human connection isn't lost in all the work that we're doing, because that's why we do what we do.
Yeah. Automated Creative just published a book about a month ago now called Using Data and Creativity in Marketing. And it was basically a collection of interviews that we did with 40 different marketing leaders. And I didn't know you then when I'd submitted the book by that point, Farah, which is disappointing. But for the next one,
I'm in.
Kill me now. And there's a guy called Hakan Yerkadal. Sorry, that's Brian's name. Anyway, he's sort of ex-Unilever guy who set up an AI research company called Bolt, and he was working, I think it was like in India, I think, and they did a campaign. I think it was for Persil or some washing up liquid thing. Anyway, they had these sachets of like a sample or like a however much 20 cents thing, and it had the soccer football player, international audience here, guys, Ronaldo. On that thing, right? Brand ambassador, whatever. He was going around houses interviewing people about how their lives and washing up and all that stuff. And this little kid probably ran out and went up to him and said, "Look at this! Look at this!" And there was these 2 packs of washing up liquids with Ronaldo on, and that was his birthday present. And I kind of at that point was just like, I was so off. I was so far off understanding this market and the relevance of my brand and the impact and the feelings around Cristiano Ronaldo in this market. And honestly, I can't remember what he said in terms of what he actually took away from that. But just knowing how far he was off was such a pivotal moment for him. And I just thought that was such a wonderful story, to your point. And one of the big things we got out of the book was that don't look at what the data is telling you, look at what it's hiding from you.
Exactly. And let's push on that for a moment, because that's one of the things that I feel so strongly about. An insight isn't a fact, right? It's a hidden truth. One of my favorite examples of this is with a brand that I wasn't affiliated with, but I often talk about it as one of the most brilliant campaigns ever. Old Spice years ago was getting their butt kicked by Axe. Again, for anyone who wasn't around during that time frame, Axe is scented body spray, and Old Spice at that point in time was perceived to be like your grandparents' brand, your grandfather's brand. And the insight that they ended up unearthing was that the majority of deodorant and body sprays for men are bought by women. Okay, that's a fact, right? Fact. Fine. That's not the insight. The insight is that women wanted a man. Like, they wanted a man who was charismatic and a Renaissance man and a man of the world, not a, teen scented, over testosterone-y boy, which is the way Axe was marketing. And from that was born the first ad of I'm on a horse, if you haven't seen it, which is, that's my term for it. That's one of the lines in the spot.
Yeah, I remember, yeah.
Old Spice campaign that really talked about what it means to be a man, but it was directly speaking to women. And so the fact was there, but the insight, that hidden truth was what they got to. And that insight, ultimately created myriad ways of them telling that story and completely revitalized their brand. And so that hidden truth, you can't find it in the data. The data can point you to it, right? The data said women buy this product. Great. You're not done once you get that data. Keep digging. Why? Why are women buying it? What do they care about? How do they make their choices? And in doing that type of work, the Old Spice team got to a real gem that ended up for the next 10 years. In fact, they're now running that same flavor of ad, if you will, right now again. So that insight has carried for, if my memory serves, I think about 20 years.
I think the ultimate insight in that sense, we'll go even one level above that, is the personal dirt is good, right? It's good for your kids to get them. But that's similar to job title. It's Tati. Sorry, I can't remember them. She's coming on. She's going to be on the podcast somewhere. But she's like head of dirt is good, or global. She's head of the insight that someone came up with 30 years ago. That is, I can't think of a more successful strategy deck in existence that gets to the point of being someone's job at Unilever. That's mad. It's absolutely mad.
Yeah, there are layers below that too. So how do you continue to learn? How do you continue to listen? How do you ensure that your product is meeting that need, that insight? So then you're communicating it, but you're also then delivering it through your product experience.
So one of the additions to that view that I got from also writing the book was there's a lady called Perla Bloom, who is she was I interviewed her when she was at EA Sports, and now she's at Expedia. Yes, and she said that an insight is only an insight if it sparks a creative idea.
Yep, and that's how you know, right?
Yeah, you should go. Oh, of course, let's go and let's that insight, that fact, women buy deodorant for men, right? Okay, well let's let the. It doesn't come up with the horse and the diamonds and but all the rest of it. But it starts that. So I always try and say, if an insight, if it doesn't inspire an idea, it's information, not an insight.
Totally.
So annoyingly, we're 2 minutes up, 2 minutes and 15 over. Broken all my own rules because I've really enjoyed it, and I'm sure we could carry on for another 2 hours. It's been brilliant. Thank you, Fara. I've been looking forward to this for such a long time. If someone wants to get in touch with you, where should they do it, and what makes a message that you will actually respond to?
I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so I'd say if people are interested in talking to me, hit me up there. And what gets me to pay attention? I want to know how we'd collaborate and what we'd work on together, not what you want to sell me.
How would we collaborate? I love it. Look at that. Concise, to the point. Fara, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It was fun.
Hi. Just before you go, I'd really appreciate it if you could take the time to write a review of the shiny new Object podcast on Apple Podcasts or iTunes, whatever it's called these days, or whichever podcast provider you use. We're an indie podcast, so it would go a long way for us if you could just share the word and give us a bit of a support on those channels. That would just be fantastic. If you haven't got time, that's also cool. And yeah, if you could tell your colleagues about the podcast, and also, if possible, don't forget to subscribe. And I'd love to hear your feedback. If you'd like to speak on the podcast or be a guest, or you think I'm asking the wrong questions, anything, I'd be super interested to hear what you think. So please email me at tom@automatedcreative.net. That's TOM at, I'm not going to bother spelling it. Anyway, you'll work it out. Thanks so much.